Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Idea Exchange. Thank you very much for coming. I'm Michelle. I'm your host tonight. Idea Exchange is founded for people to exchange great minds, knowledge, and experiences. It's organized by China-Switzerland Connection, that's CSC, and Association of Chinese Students and Scholars in Zurich, that's ACSSZ in short. CSC connects China and Switzerland on all levels to foster the mutual understanding and development, while ACSSZ is providing Chinese students and scholars with service and activities to make them feel like at home in Switzerland. We organize Idea Exchange once per month, and the topics basically cover everything. The topic for today is doing business with China. And our special guest for this evening is Ms. Yan Jia, who is the co-founder and CEO of Drivetide Capital AG, focusing on Sino-Swiss investment based on big data technology, hedge fund management for equity trading in China. Sally graduated from ETH in Zurich, and she has worked in Switzerland for Fortune 500 companies as in-house consultant. And later, she received MBA for executives from Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. And now, so far, she has started her entrepreneurship since 2013, doing business between China and Switzerland. So far, she has lived in Switzerland for over 12 years. Sally is a very intelligent and knowledgeable lady, and also she is my role model as an international modern business lady. So now let's welcome Sally.
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle, for the kind introduction. So everybody hear me now? Okay. Well, actually, she had already introduced me. First of all, I would like to take a chance to thank you all for coming, especially in the busy football season. People make the time to come over. And today we talk about China. And actually, people were joking with me, saying, you know, that China has a quite strong presence in the World Cup as well. And then I asked, like, how come? They say, you know, more than 40,000 tickets were sold to Chinese. They flew all the way coming over here. Over 30% of the sponsorship was also from Chinese companies. And I was like, okay, so we have everything except one football team joining. So today when we want to talk about China, doing business with China, first of all, I would like to think about, you know, people hear and talk and read about China here and there, you know, in pieces and all that. I want to ask all of you a question first. What is your impression of China? Have you thought about it? What attracts you here coming today and discuss about China? What is your impression about it?
Smart.
Smart. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Competitive. Competitive, okay.
The new America.
The new America. Oh my God. Wow. You really made it. Cameras on. Okay. And what else? Crazy.
Yes.
Like what? In which terms?
The speed.
The speed. Meaning very speedy. Yeah, okay. And? The biggest single market. Yes. And? Extremely polluted. Yes, we have plus and minus, of course. And?
Full of diversity.
Full of diversity. Yes. And? So, actually, have you noticed you almost accomplished a mission impossible to answer this question. Because whenever we talk about what is your impression about China, like what do you mean by China impression? Which part of China we are talking about? It's exactly the same as if I were asking you, what is your impression of Europe? We have a full house of European here. Every time I have people from the United States talking about, Europeans, they're like this and they do that, I was saying, like, what do you mean by European? We have Switzerland here, we have France here, we have Italy here, and we have Germany, we have UK. They are so different. Different language, different culture, different food, different way of thinking. Then what is your European impression? And that would be also translated to what is your China impression? All you said about China, they're all right. But whenever we talk about China impression, or maybe we talk about the prototype or stereotypes, then we have to think to whom we are talking about or pointing to. There are so many different people, and the country is huge. So we have to really accept the diversities and the differences. Don't jump to the conclusion too quickly, but look at the people one by one. So, talking about the size, comparing Switzerland with China, I guess people read about it all the time. If we talk about the land space, China is 230 times comparing Switzerland. And if you talk about the population, we'll have a little bit more. So we have like 175 times compared with Switzerland. And what does that mean? That is actually the data can be translated to all the questions that you were answered just now. Meaning, so for example, the population, I take that as an example. 175 times means if you do business right in China, you get 150 times more opportunities. And the size and the purchase power can be 155 times more. But if you do the business in the wrong way in China, you have 175 times the more chance to shake the wrong hands. It's not necessarily the wrong thing to do. It can be the right thing done in the wrong way. This we have also to be aware. And when we look at China and which region we talk about, maybe just have a little bit taste of it. Today, I want to lead you through China at 4 spots, just as 4 samples. China's diversity is much more than that. But these 4 places I recommend to go because it's very, very typical. That gives you the possibility to look at Xi'an. I always say, if you want to know China for the past 5,000 years, Xi'an is the place you can't miss. Because that is on the one Silk Road, and also it was the capital of the Tang Dynasty in China. It's quite ancient, yet it's also modern. Secondly, I recommend to go to Beijing, because I always say, if you want to know China in the past 500 years, Beijing is the place you have to be. It's the place, the capital of the Qing Dynasty. That's where the ancient China has been transformed to the modern PR China at the moment. Lots of history, lots of culture also. Thirdly, this is the place, Hong Kong, next to it, it is Shenzhen. Shenzhen is the place if you want to know China for the past 50 years. Because it was literally a little fish town in the middle of nowhere. But what happened to Shenzhen for the past years? What happened when Mr. Deng Xiaoping, who says, let's not only focus on the mentality differences, let's try to develop the economy and helping the people to have a good life. That's what is the current demand now. And then what happens? We will see it also. And fourthly, that is Shanghai. That would be the capital of finance in China. So let's see, from 5,000 years to 500 years and to 50 years. That totally brings you a different angle of China, and then you understand what do you mean by diversity. There we go, Xi'an. So normally we talk about Xi'an, we talk about the terracotta warriors. That's just for sightseeing. But also you talk about the city center. It shows you the ancient Xi'an, and it also gives you the modern part of it. In which sense? Maybe let's have a video which is more straightforward. I'm sorry. Is the sound on? can you turn on the sound, please?
Maybe stop it.
It was, okay. Maybe we'll start again.
Yeah, we can restart.
How do we do that? Okay. Just very briefly to give you the overview of Xi'an. Well, this one is very typical. Actually, Xi'an has the ancient city there with all the city walls on that. And here is they have 1,374 drones on the ancient wall of Xi'an. And they were going to be flying together and give you the overview of the city. It's not for the city specifically. It's really to give you a kind of taste and a flavor of how China is like. I know there are many Chinese friends in here, but many are also foreign friends who haven't been to China before. Might that give you something more straightforward? People ask me 1,374 because for the ancient wall in Xi'an, it is 13.74 kilometers, and that's to represent that. And what they gave is really to break the Guinness reward. And what you see here is actually John flying in the sky. And Xi'an actually stands for Tang Dynasty, where China was having different ethical groups, having different foreign companies coming to China for lots of trade, lots of business, and people live together, and the culture mix. So this is a quite typical example to give a direct impression or feeling of what China is like. I think for when we talk about China, we'll never give you a conclusion, like what's the right answer to it. There is no right answer. I can only share with you my observations, my feelings, my experiences. It's up to you to observe, to feel, and draw your own conclusion. And of course, this is also part of the culture in that, because normally when we talk about doing business, you really need to have a bit background out of it. And that is the flower representing the city. Okay, I guess we get a bit feeling out of that. And secondly, the city that can give you the experience of China for past 500 years, that is Beijing. And Beijing, when we talk about it, we see that this is the forbidden city. These are all the big emperors living. Forbidden means not letting you in. You know, China is also changing. It's not the ancient China anymore. There was one true fact. It's like a few years ago, when there was a Starbucks opened just nearby at the forbidden city. That triggers lots of discussion. It's like, this is our ancient place with a lot of culture. We really have to preserve it. How come some American Starbucks cafe coming in? But after a few while, people were thinking, this is part of modern life. Why you bother so much? Why not just leave it there? We still preserve what is supposed to be preserved. And then afterwards, people start to accept it. It's quite a vivid case and the same example. If you compare what Eiffel Tower, when it was in Paris, it's exactly the same thing. When Eiffel Tower was firstly built, the people in Paris was complaining, it's so ugly, it's just a piece of junk. But then after a while, people think, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it starts to change, and they start to like it, and they start to be proud of it. So you see, I mean, all the different places and the diversities, it's all about people. People's perception changes, and people mingle more and more from different places. And also from ancient China, like what you see on the right, is also the modern Beijing at the moment. What you see of this famous building over here is what we call the headquarters of CCTV, China TV station, we call Big Pants. People are also complaining about, wow, how ugly is it, right? And now people like it. Okay. And thirdly, the place that you get to know China for 50 years, and that is Shenzhen. Why Shenzhen? You see here, that's the Xinhua Net. That was literally the newspaper photo that you see before the year 1979. 1979 was the year Mr. Deng Xiaoping, he came all the way from Beijing to Shenzhen, saying, we want to change the mentality. No matter how you call it, communism or capitalism, it doesn't matter. We want to give good life to people. And then he started with open door policy. And here is what Shenzhen is literally like at this moment. It's nothing to do about Shenzhen as a city specifically. It's really about the changes we need to witness. So here's in Chinese to let you know, they give you some photos of Shenzhen 40 years ago. It was exactly 40 years when they are celebrating the anniversary. Just you see, it was the first McDonald's in Shenzhen. And it says, what you're seeing was the past of Shenzhen. But now, everything is brand new. And it's not a tier 1 city in China. At least if you look at the KPI of the real estate price, it definitely is. And that's how it looks like. This video was shot in 2017. And that's Mr. Deng Xiaoping I was talking about. He was actually, all political leaders, they're mostly in Beijing. It's like now in Bern. But he wanted to change the mindset. People want to push it forward. Every time when you want to do the revolution or you want to make a change or innovation, there's always the immune system of that existing system contacts you. And then he really have to go all the way down from Beijing to Shenzhen himself to make it happen. And that's the result of his efforts. Okay, so why these 3 places we mentioned? And the first one is Shanghai, an international city. We call it the financial center. We always give it a nickname. It's the city of fascination. So why we are talking about these 4 cities? They are actually just examples to show you how the China is like. Different backgrounds, culture, language also. And also in the meantime, I wanted to draw your attention to, every time when we talk about China, we focus very much on what the government is doing, what's the regulatory, the big state-owned enterprise, this and that. We focus too much on the people in power, but we didn't give enough attention to the power of people. This wouldn't be happening. All this development thing, changing thing, all the dynamics, the evolvement along the past few years, how did it happen? I think it's due to the power of people. And that is what I want to emphasize on for China. And for me, why coming back to China? Actually, I was here living, it's my 12th year living in Switzerland. Like 12 years ago, I was studying in ACSSZ in this central building here. And after working here and living here, it's been quite a while. And then in the year 2013, I was thinking, maybe as a rebel to the corporate life, let's try something new. Instead of doing all the reporting, internal lobby, and all that repetitive stuff, let's get hands dirty. Let's make something from 0 to 1. Do something interesting. So we think, and we do the analysis, where do you think is the best opportunity to come? If so, I want to be there first. And I did it. My answer to that question is China. Now, you might laugh because naturally you are Chinese coming back to China. This is more than easy. Actually, it's not. I think Switzerland is really like the wonderland in the globe. The easy solution back then was really stay in that Fortune 500, do what you're supposed to do, not taking risks. It's just straightforward. But if you want to try something new coming back to China, that was quite a challenge for me back then. Just imagine, 5 years ago, after I stayed in Switzerland for 7 years, that 7 years, all your friends changed their places where they work, maybe change the things what they do, and even change the cities where they go. And all the people you know at existing institutions and all that. And also we talked about the speed of China as well. 7 years. That's already like how many economic cycles and trends and mentality and all that changed. For me, it's literally like having a totally Swiss mindset as an SME trying to come back to China and starting something new. It's nothing easy. And I wanted to make it safe, so I have a plan B. It's a contingency plan. I wrapped myself in an executive MBA program in Hong Kong University of Science Technology for my soft landing. The soft landing is really to, get reconnected to the people, get that missing link. And then also, most importantly, is trying to get to know different people from different sectors. And from them, you know your own boundaries. For me, it's quite important. And so that's why I was in Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, that is Clearwater Bay. And it's quite a good business school that gives me a good horizon. And afterwards, we opened up our offices. And this is what the first year looks like. Actually, it's quite shocking to me to make it happen as well. Because as you see, if you work for Fortune 500 and as in-house consulting, everywhere if you travel, more than 5 hours, it is business class. And where you stay is normally 5-star hotel. But if you want to do entrepreneurship as a choice, there's always a trade-off. And the trade-off is you have to start from 0 to 1 by yourself. You have to get hands dirty. And it can be shabby sometimes. And this office was granted because we won the Technology Incubation Award in China. And then they gave us a 100 square meter office that for us to use. And then to give us some study funding, then we get started. We started to analyze all the data and everything and start build the infrastructure for our big data analysis. Luckily, for the second year, things changed. We moved on. So we see our growth. And for myself, starting an entrepreneurial business with a totally Swiss and European mindset coming back to China, again, relinked, is not easy. Especially, I think myself is quite actually an introvert. I'm shy, actually. So when I get back to China, not knowing the people, I have to make it happen. Sometimes you have to get reconnected to the ones you don't even know. Like, there can be brokerage service companies, can be big banks, and it can be the security tradings, and it can be all the high net worth individuals. Because we wanted to do, back then, we wanted to do the big data analysis, and based on that for investment. So you really have to talk to these people, understand what they needed, and get their input to make it possible. What I wanted to emphasize in here is the team. The team is something most difficult to build up. Just imagine, if you were having a brand of Fortune 500, and you have all the resources of enough money and all the channels existing, it's easy for you to hire people. But if you start from scratch, brand new, you have to develop your own vision. You have to talk to the right people. How do you convince them to come? If it is quite capable, he might as well want to start up something of his own. If he's not, I guess you don't want him either. So what is the dilemma, right? Actually, the team is also the people I wanted to mention in here. It's really to have the shared vision. It's not something just continue doing. If you have something in your mind as your vision, you see that's the future to come. That inspires the people who has the shared vision, who has the synergy, they would come. If the person only come to work for you just for money, it's just the wrong person. So here again, connect to the right person and building the right team. That is quite crucial for all entrepreneurial endeavors. Now, my life in China, if you want to see, we come back at the end of 2013, and we built up all the infrastructure in 2014, and then in 2014, March, we started to try our seed fund. The answer was easy. It's because if you want to talk to people saying, we know how to do data analysis, we know how to invest, show me, right? So we pull out our own money, put it in a seed fund, and show them our data trading with all the algorithms and all the analysis. It's actually machine learning kind of application in the financial investment world. That's what we did. After more than a whole year, then all these financial institutions, the people I didn't know at all before I come back to China, they say, yeah, I know, I think, I believe all kinds of terms. You know what you're doing. So let's invest in you. And that was when the year 2015, we launched our first fund with 30 million. When you look at the curve like this, it's a bit scary, huh? And if you know 2015, in May, the time when the first fund was launched, it's a quite critical and a challenging time. And this is literally where they give us the money. And that is the dilemma in life as well. Because if the market is down, people always like, oh, let me think about it. I'm risk reverse, and let's play safe. When the market is boomed, there was still hesitation. When everybody has earned a lot of money, they say, okay, let's do it. And that's the time to jump. So if you look at it, when like 1 month later, literally, after we launch our fund, it's really like a deep jump out of it, not only once, but second time and a third time, from more than around 5,200 to 2,900. That means all the stock prices in that time, it's only like 2 months. Only 2 months. Guess how many sleepless nights that would be, right? And then all the stock price jumped more than 60%. And that was the challenge. I think the funny part of studying entrepreneurial kind of endeavor is not only about making things happen. It's about you have to meet yourself with pure sincerity. What do I mean by that? When you have a normal life and things doesn't crash that much, it's routine, you just keep doing it right, you can't be so wrong. But when you are in the stock trading, why this is interesting is because you totally have an accelerated life experience. One day you see greed, the other day you see fear, and you see all the fear and the greed exchange online, offline, people behave. When it is like the bull market, everybody was shining, everybody was paying money, thinking like, wow, I'm becoming a billionaire soon. And even the people walking in the streets, the cleaning lady tell you, I know some stock that is really, really good. Do you want to try? I heard from a big boss, right? And then when the market was dipping down, some people were struggling in between. Then they were thinking, yeah, it's going to come up anyway. Maybe let's buy. And some more people are so pessimistic. No, it's too bad. Let me sell. And then after everything crashed on the floor, nobody dared to pick it up. That's what literally happened in the market when you totally lose out liquidity. Meaning, nobody's trading anymore. Nobody dared to sell, and nobody dared to buy. 3,000 stocks, everybody looking at each other, nothing happens. Just imagine that kind of quiet silence. And what it brings to me is, during these 2 months, or maybe slightly longer time afterwards, you really have to push yourself, life really pushed yourself to a corner. You have to ask yourself the ultimate questions you don't normally ask. It's like, why am I doing this? Why is this important? And at this kind of critical timing, what should I do? Should I continue in doing it? Or should I pass it on? If I have the resources at hand, like capital, how can I allocate my resources? If I have different traders, to whom shall I trust? And this is the critical decision. And in this harsh environment, you have to make. And that brings me to a lot of kind of calming myself down kind of measures. For example, meditation. And don't take meditation like escape from real life. It's really to shut out from the external world sometimes, to really obey what you hear from the inner voice, from the internal world. It's reconnect to yourself again. I always believe you have to reconnect to your inner self before you can reconnect to the outside world. You have to think how you think the universe operates and how the world operates, what it means between you and yourself, and what it means between you and external people. So again, the stock market is actually an index for human nature. It's not financial trading. Forget about all those jargons, the techniques. It's not relevant. What is relevant is how do you perceive people's perception. So that actually a hammer is really like a hammer on my head, wakes me up. Then you understand it has nothing to do with me. It's not important. What is mostly important is what do other people need? What can you do for them? What do they require? If I translate that into a market business word, is what the market demands, not what you can provide. How others like it or not you personally. There's not you. You have to cut off ego before you can really get into meditation. And that is something really opens a new chapter of how we perceive the overall entrepreneurial endeavor. And in the meantime, besides meditation, besides the accelerated life experience in the stock market, I also try to figure out what are other wisdom people, wise people, who they are, what do they do, and how they perceive. Do they have an answer? It's the ultimate kind of search within yourself also. And in the meantime, that's why I read everything. I read psychology, I read history, I try to read also commercials, Eastern, Western, all that. Figure out how do that provide me a solution to get reconnected to myself and the other world, the other part of the world. And that's also why I think the most important thing is really to contribute to other people. Only make other people successful out of it can make you successful out of it. That's my reconcile with my inner self and outside. And that's why I put all the books that I read and all the resources with which is good, what it means, and what might be the takeaway, and what are the key opinions, summarized up, and put it online. So for ones who like it to check it, who can find it helpful, and who wanted to use it for themselves, feel free to take. And this is what I like most. It is from Romain Rolland. It's a French writer. What he says is, there is only one heroism in the world, to see the world as it is and to love it. Meaning, the world itself is harsh. The only heroism is by recognizing it is harsh and challenging and still embrace it. And that's what literally happens, and that's what the decisions you have to make on a daily basis if you wanted to open your own entrepreneurship. So again, it's all about people, connecting you and others and yourself. Sometimes when I'm thinking about people, after the financial crisis, actually our fund was doing quite okay. The market dips for more than 60%. Our fund only dips for 5%. That totally beats the market. And this is also quite a China philosophy, because if you look at Taoism, you see yin and yang, meaning there is not absolutely great and there is not absolutely bad. Things are always changing. It's dynamic. That kind of harsh market conditions pushes us to the corner, while if we can make the right decisions in that extreme, people recognize it. And the financial institutions more and more try to open doors to us because you're kind of testified in a way. So then afterwards, we launched our second fund, third fund, and fourth one. And after all that, we also start to think, maybe not only for asset management, maybe not only for trading, which appears a little bit like zero-sum game sometimes. Either one win or the other have to lose. Is there anything we can do to help people, to reconnect us to them, to use all the data analysis we have for other people to use? Can that be of help? And the people, when we talk about it, I take Europe as an example. That we always in Europe, especially in Switzerland, to be honest, we focus very much on the top of the pyramids. Meaning that it's either Fortune 500, prestige, headquartered in here, or it's private bankers serving ultra high net worth individuals. These are all making rich richer or powerful even more powerful. But how about more than 90% of the economy? These are small and medium-sized enterprises. These are people who are doing the manufacturing, who are in the niche market leaders, who are trying to make things happen. These are also the cornerstone of it. Can we do anything to help them, to make it happen? If we have all this data, we have all this extreme experience in China, is there anything we can pass on to them? And that's why we start our focus on the middle of the pyramids, we call it. And that's why I think this is not only for me, but for all the audience who come today. The reason why we're doing this sharing is actually to really give back and reward the Sino-Swiss community. And I think for the community, everybody came here, you must have something connected to China or connected to Switzerland that something excites you. And I think this is the moment we have to think. I see the mega trend coming between Switzerland and China. And not only that, I think it is the whole Europe. different people coming together, having a different segregation of duties, the new division of the work labor force. People focus on what they're good at, people protect themselves well, but in the meantime, collaborate wisely with each other. Make sure, shake the right hands, and things would happen. So again, it's about connecting the right people. You know, when I was analyzing connecting the people, I was reading all these books. One thing draws my attention. There's a book called Exponential Organizations. These are the kind of solution in the business world telling you, if you do this and that, that's where you can very rapidly grow 10 times, for example. It's not the ancient linear growth. It's exponential. Sounds fancy, isn't it? And then I started to do some market research. I found out one very vivid example. The example is called Haier. It's a Chinese brand located in Qingdao, Shandong province, up there in China. Not the most developed place. I see, nobody heard about it. I look at your face. So that's how it is. Well, this brand is the world's #1 brand for home appliances. And home appliance, what kind of size I'm talking about? They have employee of 80,000, and they produce 55 million home appliances every yearly. So this is their size. And they are so well known in the whole Asia Pacific and also in Africa. Maybe not that much in Europe. I think that's the next step they have to think about. And for this one, what they do, right. What I've done is actually a very vivid example of the Chinese companies passing through different phases of the past 30, 40 years. It was established in the 1980s. It was actually a state-owned enterprise. What's more, it is a bankrupted state-owned enterprise. Back then, it was 800 people. Nobody wanted. I mean, who wants a bankrupted state-owned enterprise? So local government comes out and look for the CEO out of it. The X1 people says no, the other people says no, and all that. Until they found the third one, Mr. Zhang Ruiming. He said, okay, somebody has to do it. Then he takes up the job. And this was the real photo you see. What they're doing, they're breaking the refrigerators. In the 1990s in China, we can still recall probably that the supply is not sufficient to meet all the demands. So that was a not very developed area or age, let's put it. So if anything you can produce, people would take it, even with flaws, even if it's not perfect. So at this kind of condition, when people accept the way as it is, and when outside world was discussing, you are importing from it, I mean the quality you have to check, and this is where Mr. Zhang talked to his people saying, either it's not a must, but we still have to do it to guarantee the quality. And we have to have our own brand. Otherwise, it is just a commodity. And the photo you see is him letting all the people breaking the refrigerator with flaws. He thinks it's not perfect. And there were in total, in 74 refrigerators they break. And that hammer is still hanging in Haier now in their own museum to recall that special period of time. And you think it was easy. Actually, back then, that refrigerator, the cost to produce it, was 2 years' salary of the worker who was breaking it. So you can see what kind of big decision he was making back then. But most importantly, another bigger decision he was made is to break up the company totally. Means for 80,000 people in that company with the typical kind of hierarchy in the pyramids, like all the Fortune 500 we have seen here. He break it up to 2,200 enterprises, small and medium-sized enterprises with the shared brand. He break the whole organization into a cluster or an ecosystem of SMEs. And all these people, they push them to the frontier. It's like you can't hide back, sitting in your nice office, knocking your head, thinking what the other people would need, making your own decisions. No, no, no. You have to come to the frontier, meet people, get hands dirty. That's the real way to work. And that's how the work relationship should be in future. He figured it out more than 10 years ago. And he applied that to his organization. And during that time, a manufacturing company like this is not really rapid like internet. They still grow more than 3 times after this organizational change. It's a huge decision. And that's also why he was quoted as the world's top 50 thinker by the European Award for the Prestige Management Award. So again, it's about people. Like all we talk about today is about China. China and Switzerland are 2 different countries, but in the end, it's the people from China and Switzerland connecting each other and make things happen. Either if you want to do it in your private life, it's connecting with yourself or your friends or the company you take, or from the B2B level, business to business, it's the collaboration between the different SMEs, the new way of working together. The work relationship has changed. I think that is the innovation yet to come. It will be realized by the digitalization when we can really record how people behave and make it efficient, and also will be realized with artificial intelligence by replacing the repetitive work from people. And then these are only tools. These are not the groundbreaking things. The groundbreaking things is when enabled by digitalization and by AI, we can change the way how people work together. And when you bring out all the potential of people, that is where the biggest change is going to come. And that is also what we conclude for today. It's all about people. And thank you very much for that. It's my sharing from my side. And then, so if there were any questions from the floor, we can take it, or any discussions we can hold. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the wonderful sharing, Sally.
Thank you.
So if you have any questions, please, I will encourage you to take this chance to ask Sally, because otherwise later it will be expensive. Yeah, please.
I think a lot of people will have criticism over the political risk in China.
Yep.
How do you incorporate that risk? Like like you said, the logarithm, and also in a very scientific way with the analysis. Just curious how this can be incorporated and calculated to deliver a strategy that can make sense.
So how do you incorporate the regulatory?
Risk, because that's kind of people, like having influence is rather not really like the outcome that you can actually predict it, like with experiments, probably of course you fail or you have this successful rate, but over the past decade we see a number of different incidents or big issues like coming up, which is like I'm very interested in this artificial and also incorporating all the factors to deliver strategies. So I'm really
Okay, yep, got a question. So everybody hear her, or do I have to repeat?
Yeah, please repeat a bit.
Okay, so question is how to incorporate the regulatory and political risk when we are talking about China, and then when we're doing analysis, how to do it in a systematic way and put it as like a factor in the overall decision making. So that's a very good question, actually. When we want to do the machine learning, apply the machine learning technology in the data mining and also transfer that into the investment decision, it's actually to use the computation power to replicate the whole decision-making process of yourself. Meaning if you are a trader, you are a decision maker, what are the factors you look at? You would look at the regulatory part, you would look at the macroeconomic part, you would also look at the microeconomic part, you would also look at the emotional part of the current people and what they do and so. So when you take all that, what you can do is not to track what is constantly changing, but to track what is not changing. This is how we do for the data analysis and investment. People always say, things change, and you see the bull market, you see the bear market, how can you tell which is which? I don't look at that. I look at what is people's behavior. Do they change that much? Not necessarily. The best way when you do the analysis, of course, you look at the industry, you look at where the companies are, how do they perform, what is the bottleneck, it is suppressed or not suppressed. But at the end of the day, these are all financials. But barely we do our investment decisions based on just on financials. We look at what the people, what the team, and how to do kind of profit separation, or in short, it is organizational kind of structure. These are the most important things to look at.
So you're talking about looking at the fundamental value creation of the companies, because then politically, like for China, we see incidents that, for example, like Hainan, when Hainan Airlines, for example, or this pushing properties, political decisions somehow exert big influences on the flow of funds, and also the corporate governance, and also all of the big decisions are being impacted. So that's why I understand, of course, fundamentally, you can always look at the value creation, what kind of like profits, and also analyze all these financial statements. But just to me, it's really like a big question mark there.
Well, as said, there are things changing, but you focus on what you think don't change. For example, people will say, okay, for one thing, the governments say, I encourage you for global collaboration, and maybe you can invest in this and that. And there are times we also have difficulty for the money outflow, and there are times that you have also to do the approval. But why? All these changes, if you stick to the things that don't change, is what do you think fundamentally the market and the people would need it? If it were the future development you foresee it is coming, then stick to that things that doesn't change. If it is something in between, if you want to take chances, say, I want to buy a football team, say, I want just to gamble with the market price, these are not really creating any value, if it is so, just by taking the price differences. That is something heavily impacted by the political or economical different cycles. But stick to something that would create value, that has a very steer or very strong demand no matter what. This thing doesn't change, would be where the opportunities are. Stick to them. And all the regulatory parts, what is their standpoint, what's the core they needed, is to protect all these benefits and all the future development and all that. And this will be also the principles, how they make all this regulatory. So in short, if you want to focus on something that you think doesn't change, is to put yourself in the regulation maker's shoes and thinking what they're gonna do, instead of waiting there when they announce it, it's already too late. Did you get what I was saying?
Yeah, I get
Okay. Yeah, we can talk further in detail about that. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe this question we can talk later.
Okay, great.
I haven't done my homework, sorry, but can you just explain what are your funds? Who are your clients? What is the difference of your investment decisions from the traditional investment world?
Well, this is not a commercial campaign, so.
I think I need to understand that before.
Okay, just very briefly, we do data analysis and we extract the key decision-making factors in diagnosing how the macro level of economy is and how we think the sector needs. And then we transfer all this data to share that for the cross-border collaboration, for the investment also, and also we use that for trading, just in short. Chinese trading that is on the secondary market for asset management. We also facilitate European and China companies to work together for future growth. We also invest in that for equities. Also, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see someone. Yeah.
Hi, Sally.
Hello.
So much. I really like
Thank you.
We agree that people are the most important capital for enterprise, let's say. And I have a question regarding the Swiss-made talents and the Chinese-made talents. Because as a Chinese student, now I need to trade off between trying all my best to get through all the barriers to find a job in Switzerland, at the same time going back to China and work overtime in Zurich as an entry-level employee, but also at the same time be exposed to a lot of opportunities and a lot of training. And on one hand, in Switzerland, you have very good work-life balance. You have a very good organization, like management in the company usually, and you have very good regulatory, like social welfare. And while on the other hand, in China, sometimes you work more, but you can learn so much, and you also are facing a much bigger market volume, which is like uncomparable in a lot of places in the world. And now for me, I'm really struggling. Like if I found a job here, I become a Swiss-made talent. What will I lose if I'm going back to China?
Wow.
It's actually a common question for many Chinese students here.
Yeah.
Somebody said, yeah. Okay. I think it's a very valid question, of course, but I think we're taking a wrong assumption here. The assumption is Switzerland and China work opportunities or growth opportunities. Is that either or? Can you take both? No, I think for us, either we are Swiss who are very deeply connected with China, having an international mentality, or we are Chinese living and working in Europe for so long and getting to know the diversities even more at a greater depth. I think the bigger opportunity for us is really to connect both worlds, either in business or in social stakes, either in your impact or whatever thing you do. I think that's the best playing field. And this is not only to say, I devote myself to a higher purpose or making it complicated. It's really like a big opportunity for your private individual as well. Just imagine, if you are a Chinese, domestic only in China, you have been missing out, say, how long you've been in Europe? 5 years, for example? You have that 5 years missing. In China, 5 years, it means another world. And it may take you 1 or more years to get reconnected for your soft landing, and that is also the opportunity kind of risk you need to take. And also, if you compare here, if you compare with the local Swiss, you can't be more Swiss than a Swiss. You know what I'm saying? You really have to combine both parts together with your maybe ancient wisdom and also connect that with Western wisdom. And that's what I said about the Sino-Swiss community. That's where the best part we can play. And I think that will give you the best opportunity for personal growth as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. One more question. Okay, next one.
Mm-hmm. So everybody has a very long question. I have a very short one.
Oh, thank you.
What do you consider as an interesting part of your work and life? What do you consider as the most interesting part of your work and life?
My interesting part of work and life?
Yes. Personally.
Well, for me, there is no separation of work and life. It's totally one thing.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, most interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Work is life. I'm having so much fun.
Yeah, but most interesting part of your work and life.
Most interesting part. I think the most interesting part of work and life is really to expand your own horizons, your own boundaries, by trying something new, taking the risks, and be the self you want to be, but you haven't been yet. To be more concrete on it, I think today when we are talking about entrepreneurial endeavor, this is actually the same thing. The safe choice is to just stay where you are. But I don't want to do that because I don't want to just say 20 years later, I knock my head, say, oh, I regret it. If I were there, maybe I should try it. To be honest, if you wanted to do entrepreneurship, it's not that you are not feared of uncertainty. You have to acknowledge it. It's human nature. If something is not sure, it's uncertain, it might fail. It's also challenging your ego and all the beliefs you have. It's not that you're just so brave that you conquer the world. That's Hollywood. What you do is you acknowledge the risk, the uncertainty. You still embrace it. And in the meantime, when you conquer it, you see a better self within you. And that is, I think, the most fun part. It might be breathtaking in and out a little bit, but at the end of the day, you really appreciate it. And that's my answer to your question. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
So based on your experience, and do you think it's even possible to maintain two lives? Like when you work for a company and at the same time work for your own company, or is that not at all possible?
Well, so first of all, if you are already with a company and you want to work for your own company, you have to check up with your contracts to see whether there is any like a conflict of interest. But just imagine if it were not, maybe you do 50% of like admin work, for example, it is not contradicting anybody. Well, in the meantime, trying something new. Many workshops and many people are talking about it. I think that is more of a planning phase instead of you really doing it. My personal experience is, maybe I'm not a genius, there may be much better ones to do as your reference, but I think for entrepreneurship, there's so many smartest people there doing something to make it from 0 to 1. They're the people not within the best resources or the capabilities, never enough money, never enough time, never the best people. And they have to really make the best efficiency coming so they can really have a choice in the market, have a place, and then maybe later phase conquer existing big players. This is something you absolutely need to all in. Even with all in, working 100% or even 200%, you might not necessarily make it happen. How would you be so sure saying, I'm only devoting 20% to it and I can conquer the world? I don't believe in that. So it's just my personal experience for your reference. There are people doing multiple. Say Elon Musk is doing 3. Yeah, and he also put a Tesla to the Mars. So yeah, that could also be a possibility. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I think you are a very brave person, and you like to have like challenges and to improve your ability. And but not every people like this. Some people like to stay in this comfort zone. And many Swiss people are quite conservative. Sorry, not everyone.
Thanks for the clarification.
They think they are doing some international business if they are dealing with Germany. They think they are very international if they talk to some German or Austrian people. So not really international, as in the sense they just like meet the very unknown culture, like in China, different religion, not a Christian, and different philosophy. So kind of, sometimes they have fear, sometimes they ignore the suggestions. How do you persuade the people to follow your suggestion? Do you have any tips, or what's your own experience?
Okay. Very valid question as well as a very challenging one. I would put it in this way. Actually, because if we're doing the cross-border analysis and talking to people from both worlds, you really see the diversity as well. This is also part of the diversity. While you quote the Swiss people or European people as more reserved in a way, I think it's the opportunity cost that's much, much higher. If you compare that, if you look at economics, all human behaviors, they were irrational, not to the maximum, but they're part of the rationale behind it. Say if you are at Switzerland, you almost have everything. It's like the best place in the world, the best life quality in the world. If people are taking very high risk, the opportunity cost for them is much, much higher. Maybe to maintain it is already good enough. But if you put people, say, 30 years ago in China, or now in India, for example, there's nothing much to lose. Either you try out, you gain it, or you just stay as the status quo. So that opportunity cost is also calculated from economic terms. And after all the calculation of your personal opportunities and all that, you make your decisions. This is quite okay. And this is also easily understandable. And in the European business world, of course, there are a lot of more and more interactions, and already existing interactions are mostly between European companies and European countries within the continent. That's what you quote as Switzerland trading with Germany and all that. But now, people are more and more pushed into the frontier, say, maybe we'll have to discuss another possibility. When Asia is coming, how are we going to deal with it? Actually, I do not agree that this is not accepted idea. You see lots of associations, also like us associations, holding a lot of events discussing this topic. There was the other night I was at an event when the ambassador of Germany was there, ambassador of Switzerland was there, and also the editor-in-chief for Republic was also there. They're discussing, what is our China strategy? What do we do about it? Like 2 weeks ago also, that at the General Assembly of China-Swiss Association, the Federal Chancellor, Ms. Doris Leuhardt, was also there, giving her address on the China strategy, her kind of perception of it, her understanding of it. Why so frequent a discussion coming up? Why this topic draws so much attention to everyone was there, either relevant already now or wanted to be relevant for the future? So I think there are enough elite, extremely wise and entrepreneurial people in whole Europe. They want to embrace this opportunity. I totally see it coming. So the reason when we quote this with people, some people fear, some have concerns, it takes time. It's like everything coming new, it takes time. And people come in different batches. Maybe come here and more and then stabilize. So this is like a technology release. It's the same thing. The new idea is also like a technology release. And often when I'm communicating with them, I show them facts. I show them data. If they were an SME from Europe who wanted to come to China, and then what we do is we really look at our database to see in your specific market, in your niche market, how big the market it is in China, and how it evolves in the past 5 years. And who are the relevant other foreign companies in your sector had already been China now, and where they are, how they developed. All these things you have to present to them before they can make a rational decision. And I think that's important. Also, there are many people coming to China very much concerned about intellectual property and all that. This is a quite crucial or challenging question in a way because people just hear everywhere tweeting about this. But let's quote data. In China last year, we have the registered IP 51,000. That was world number 2 next to United States. If you say 30 years ago, people don't care that much about it, and people complain about it. But how about 30 years later? Have you updated your memory or your understanding of this? So things are changing so rapidly. This is also what I want to draw people's attention. Never just jump to a conclusion too quickly by hearing it, somebody addressing it, or read about it in one pieces. Look at it as a whole. Keep open-minded, because that's the opportunity and the risk you have to incorporate at the same time. It does not necessarily mean that all European companies have to come to China. For the ones that were at the initial phase, maybe focus on domestic market is better. For the ones, if you think you only work with people for once, it's one-off game, then you have to double think. Because if we quote game theory, that is, without shadow of future, people might default. But if it is repetitive, it's long-term, it's multitasking taking, not only you, 101, but 10N, would that be more stabilized? Would that be more protected in a way? It's about kind of get yourself ready before you go. It's not like just, I'm here. It's better to be overprotected rather than not protected, to be honest. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Last question. Sorry, I've seen this lady in red.
Sally, thanks for sharing your
Thanks.
experience. For me, I have some primary ideas to start up my own business, but I'm not exactly know what the idea is, and I don't exactly know what people I want to find. So I was wondering if at the beginning you have a very clear idea, and if you really know what kind of people you want to find, and where and how
Yep, that's a very good one. And that is a very typical process when you want to do entrepreneurship. Actually, when we say about entrepreneurial endeavor, you must have a great idea in your mind for a decade, and you kind of know what you want to be when you're a childhood, and everybody is like Steve Jobs, and create something new, and that it comes. No. Majority of people, they find it along the way. It's not asking you to jump into entrepreneurship, quitting your job, study something fresh, and then maybe end up in a garage thinking, what should I do today? That's not the way. The way is, if you want to do entrepreneurship, get in with the group who are also thinking alike. These are the people who might have technology, liking somebody who can help them with business, or they're the people who are very familiar with the commercial world, wanted to have a product to launch on. It's always a teamwork. You have to be the right place, then you meet the right people. Then after interaction with them, you might come with a new idea, kind of more concrete business plan. Even with that business plan, the world never evolves exactly the same as what you planned. Then you have to pivot. You have to change. So ultimately, all the changes and differences and uncertainties pushes you to the corner again with the ultimate question, what exactly I wanted? That's what I focus on people, meaning that you really have to get connected to your inner self. What is the strong belief that you wanted to make it happen no matter what? You know what I'm saying? Meaning that must be a something you wanted to make it happen, with or without money, with or without the help of others, you would find a way. You have to find that thing. If you ended up with something that is only speculating, you might totally give it up in the way because all the challenges and all that. Sometimes I'm thinking, all the challenges, the bumpy ways you get through from where you are to where you want to be, all this is actually to wash out the pretenders. The pretenders who thought that entrepreneurship is the fast, quick way to get them to a billionaire or whatever. But you really have to ask yourself, what is that thing I want to make it happen from 0 to 1? And that's the answer only yourself knows. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
Thank you very much, Sally.
Thank you.
I think maybe starting tonight, a lot of us will go home starting thinking the ultimate questions. Why I'm doing this, what I'm doing. Okay, apologies, but I would like to leave more time for your later social networking. So that's all for Q&A. If you would like to continue the conversation with Sally and us, there is the possibility to join the dinner with us after the event. If you're interested, please contact the president of CSC, Mr. Kali Billy. Please come on the stage. Yeah, if you're interested in joining the dinner, please contact him. And later in Apéro, if you have questions or if you need help, please contact our colleagues. For example, if you would like to become the member of CSC, please contact Marcus. Marcus, please come on the stage.
We're all a little bit shy here today, so.
And if you're interested in maybe sponsoring our next idea exchange event, please contact Michael. Big thanks to our idea exchange team. They make everything happen tonight. Thanks a lot. On top of that, yeah, please give them a round of applause. On top of that, we would like to thank our sponsors. First, Smith & Smith Wine Company. Oh, yeah.
Just to one more sentence. These are all my contact details. And I think for the big dream, we want to connect both worlds. It's not an individual effort. There must be a whole community doing it. For those who have the shared interest, we can discuss or follow up after the event to see whether there's anything we can do together.
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry for being rude. Is it possible to ask another question?
Maybe listen in April. Thank you.
Yes.
last question. See, you have to make it happen.
Sorry for keeping you here that long. And I have several questions.
You have several questions. I thought it was the last one. Okay, go ahead.
No. One question. You are representing.
Maybe it's better if you can understand a little bit so that we can hear.
Sorry, can you repeat it?
Or maybe louder.
You want to come forward? We can't hear you from the.
Okay, so I'll try to. Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah, go ahead. You want to step up? Come on.
Yeah.
Quickly.
No, I just want to ask one question.
Yeah, go on.
Just go ahead.
I guess it feels too good to be true. Okay, go ahead, quickly.
I cannot hear you. That's why. Okay, so my first question is, how this transformation of inner needs that you have explained help to prevent, okay, give an example that when a tech need is due before the transformation. And the second question, you talked about the middle of the period.
Wait again.
You talked about focus more on the middle of the period.
Yes.
The middle ground, right? It's actually how, because a lot of mutual funds also do that. So we don't advantage, special advantage for that, why the company for that. So I have some answers, but I can explain.
Okay, some other questions between that room. So just being very briefly, what he was asking is, what are the changes if you connect to your inner self, to your reaching the inner peace? We started to do the cross-border investment and started to use our data to help SMEs, the middle-sized enterprises, to connect to worlds. It's because after all the extremes of life, and after so many times you really push yourself to the corner, you ask yourself, what is the ultimate question? And that ultimate question is how you get connected. It's after all these different temptations and all the distractions, you focus on what makes you happy and what you believe in. What I believe in, ultimately I see, is not to have a better life of yourself. It's really to make it possible happen between the two worlds that I want to enable it happening. And for this happening, that's also answering your second question. Why the middle part in Europe? Why SMEs? Because these are the ones I think is important because that represents the majority of the people. We are connecting people, ultimately, at the end of the day. Whenever you talk about B2B business or B2C as to customer, it's like B2B is B from one company, the people, meeting B from the other company, other people. It's still people. I mean, there's nothing more than that. And how do we do that? Is we use our data to automate many of the analysis, and we are using the algorithm for machine learning so we can do the matchmaking between two worlds. Enable all SMEs, when they before wanted to come to China, they can only use people doing consulting and all that. And these people, they have to connect. You might know someone, somebody's uncle, somebody's aunt, that might be somebody knowing another person. The efficiency is low, which means the cost is high. And that's the entry barrier that so many cross-border things didn't happen. But if we can give this data to the companies who wanted to go to China, or to consultancies who wanted to use this as a tool to help them to better serve their own clients, this might be something added value. And this data, we're actually putting it online. And this platform we are trying to do, actually, when you were asking, so we are trying to launch it next month or the month after next, depends on progress. And all the data about which niche market is, how did they go, and also like in which niche market, which foreign companies are already there, etc., are all given out for free. So it's up to all the business people in here who has a potential interest in China, go and search and decide by yourself. What we're interested in is making these things happen. When technology meets the market, the potential growth of it, we want to join that part. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it cannot be a better explanation.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.